Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. And it's a great pleasure to chat with the New Jersey community and abroad, because I'm sure we've got folks from all over now that all these events are distributed. So I will be talking for a few minutes about WordPress maintenance at a kind of a high level, but I'll give some suggestions for folks that are more seasoned in and around WordPress solutions. So yeah, really excited to join the New Jersey community as of about a year or so ago. So to introduce myself briefly, my name is Mervin, and I've been a New York City and New Jersey community member for a little while. And as of last year, I have the great honor of also making WordPress my day job. I work for one of the WordPress VIP consultancy agencies at rtCamp. So feel free to connect with me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and at mervinhernandez.com. I am a frequent participant also at the help desk, so very happy to help and offer guidance beyond tonight. Quick disclosure, so these are my opinions and my sincere recommendations based on experience and based on sources that I trust. There's no affiliate links, so there's no money coming to me from any point in this presentation, and I hope you enjoy it. So WordPress maintenance, why is this important to begin with? And if you've been around WordPress for even a little while, you might have bumped into one of these screens. Now, I wish we were in a live setting so I could ask you to raise your hands and tell me who's bumped into the white screen of death on WordPress. And I would bet $1 that it would be probably the majority of the room, because as you start out, you start tinkering, experimenting, installing things, trying different hosts. You almost inevitably bump into these learning experiences around WordPress. The white screen of death kind of being among the worst experiences. But the reason why site maintenance and good practices is important is because things happen organically, malicious, because of malicious intent, because of mistakes, but things happened around a website that can have an impact on user experience, performance, availability, as we're going to talk about. So many of the causes of issues and things that can crash your site are just critical errors that come about from bad plugin updates, bad theme updates. And to give you just another example of organic ways that this can happen, on occasion, pushing an update from a staging environment to production, or even uploading a zip file that might have gotten corrupted or incomplete, if it's missing a line of code, or if it's missing a file in that rewrite procedure, it might crash your site. Some syntax error come up with PHP and the site won't render. So completely unintentional, nobody's fault, things that computers do, inexplicable, and it might have a negative effect on your site. Front-end theme breaks, malware. There are vulnerabilities that come about every so often. I'd say a few times a year we hear about critical vulnerabilities found in some big plugin. One of the recent ones that comes to mind is the WPML plugin, or one of the multi-language plugins recently had a major vulnerability, partly because of a disgruntled employee, I think, but nevertheless, it became obvious that some update needed to take place on that plugin because it was going to open up a backdoor to websites. So user access lockouts, if your site gets hacked and you no longer have access to your site, how do you recover from situations like that? And server resources capping, I mean, that can have a negative impact just because of availability. So keeping an eye on the resource usage and what your site is doing on your host is also something to consider, which we'll talk about. But all of these are very good and real reasons why it's important to keep an eye on your site in very different directions and have ways to mitigate various risks. True to fashion, I have to bring yours truly experience, because I am not at all immune to mistakes and mishaps, and this was completely human error that I'm about to tell you this story. So among the projects that I manage on my own independently, I have many friends that want me to help them create websites for various purposes and in various degrees of complexity. The example that I'm going to tell you about tonight was a very simple art gallery type of a website, kind of a portfolio site with pictures and contact me if you're interested in this piece of artwork. So very, very simplistic website that we were in the process of building. So I provisioned it. It was in the staging environment that I had created for my friend. I told him, go play around, tinker, do whatever you want. Everything is, you can't break anything. And apparently they must have installed a plugin that was not among the best. It was not supported, and it brought in a bug. It brought in a pretty bad bug. So after I spent a few minutes looking at why the site isn't displaying properly and it's redirecting me to some spammy looking site, I go and I look at the database, and surely enough, a malicious script got into the site, and it wrote tons and tons of redirect rules on the body of many pages and products that he had created. Again, not a catastrophic situation here. In this context, it was a small site. It was still being developed. All of our content is in Google Docs on the site, but a bad experience for my friend and myself. And it goes to show you that no matter how small the project, you need to have a good process in place. You need to have safety measures, and you just need to observe good practices even as you're building sites, because it'll cost you time. And that brings us to what is the cost of having mishaps happen, and it is time, if not worse. So if you have an e-commerce solution, well, that has some very, very real implications. Your customers and your visitor experience will suffer. Either your site is slow, it's not accessible, the cart or the e-commerce functionality is not working properly, your sales aren't going through, or your customers aren't able to read your articles or subscribe, what have you. There's security risks. What if that malicious script started emailing and sending out spam out of your WordPress website? Just like we give permissions to good plugins to do that whenever they should, like newsletter plugins or form notification plugins, if somebody creates a malicious script that you might have bought off of a less trustworthy website, you put it on your application, it starts doing things that you don't intend it to do, sending out bad spam, redirecting, sending out links. So there's impact on the user experience, the developer experience, the store manager experience, possibly monetary. It all ends up costing us time. So this talk is aimed at helping you avoid the woulda, coulda, shoulda situations in WordPress, giving you the best practices, things to put in place that will help you avoid heartache. And if you do find yourself in a situation with a website, that you have some good safety nets in place to manage them. So for foundations, it should not be overstated that a good host is a big piece of the puzzle. And that is just your foundation. That's your slab on which you're building your house on. Cheaper is not always better. There's many adages that we can say here, but looking at hosts, there's many good ones. There's many good affordable ones. And looking at your website and your websites through the lens of how important are they, or how much money they bring in, or how many people are looking at them, then you want to set up a good foundation to build your site solution on. If you have a big e-commerce website, if you're making some good money on it, or if it's an affiliate network that you've got 6 or 7 integrations in there and a fulfillment process, that's pretty important. And around the WordPress community, there's some really good options. There's hosts that dedicate themselves to doing WooCommerce hosting right, and they'll give you above and beyond support doing some of the things that we're going to talk about in the presentation today. So a good host is just a great foundation to build on top of. The latest web standards. So looking at plugins and themes that are lightweight, that are supported, that are well documented. Looking at when was the last time that a plugin got updated. I can mention a few even good plugins that I see that I use on a regular basis, and they might be a version or two behind on testing for WordPress. I still trust them, but if I see that a plugin is popular enough that I'm interested in it, and it is a significant number of versions behind on WordPress testing, then you might want to second guess it, because if you install it on your site, it might not be compatible with this version of WordPress or this version of PHP, and it might break your site. So looking at theme and plugin documentation, how recently that's updated, how well supported, or how they address issues and tickets on a forum, those are things to take into consideration, and that'll be a big piece of the puzzle to help you keep your site with the best puzzle pieces in place. Lightweight theme is another big piece. That's a heavy factor in performance. Having a theme that doesn't load too much, or that does minification or optimizing on its own. Implementing a staging environment. If you have, I'd say probably over half of the top hosts now offer a staging environment, so that you can have a place where you can replicate your site very easily, install, tinker, experiment, and even break things without the risk of taking down your main production environment. So you get to do things in a safe environment that will not impact your visitors if you're doing something different or developing something new. That's another piece of a good solution. Good advice and trusted sources. So there's WP Beginner, there's Joy of WP, there is Torque Magazine, there's WP Tavern. Around the community of WordPress, you're coming to the meetup. So you're already looking for great sources of sound guidance and information for how to manage and build good solutions. And follow good common sense. I'll phrase it this way: if your site is making money, it is something that people depend on, or your business has workflows and processes that involve your website in order to function, then give the site the care, the proper care, and the meritorious amount of investment that it deserves to be that business tool, to be that revenue generating application that you depend on. So reliability, all within proportions. So let's break it down. Let's go deeper into the various aspects of the WordPress maintenance stack. And I'm going to start with the best recommendations, because we have some outstanding members of the WordPress community that offer free and premium services, and they really care a lot. They contribute, they speak, they attend, and I think all of the folks on this screen would be fantastic recommendations. And what I want to illustrate here is that depending on the level of your site, you can have different levels of involvement. If you want a free tool that you manage on your own, and you only involve a developer if something happens, or if you can ask them for specific things, then maybe you would be best served by a WordFence or an iTheme security plugin. Put in place some of the practices that we talked about today, keep those plugins up and monitoring, and if something happens, then you have at least a layer of protection that you can then, if you need a developer to debug a bad theme or something like that, that's the layer that you add on top of that. And then you have the folks that do much more of the maintenance and support for you. Those would be the WP Buffs and the Go WPs. Those would be services that are going to take care of almost everything that we're going to talk about tonight. They do it for you. They do the security, the backup monitoring, the uptime monitoring, and they are at an arm's length. If something happens to your site, you can call your hosting company, or if it's related to the inside of the WordPress instance, they're at the ready to help you debug those issues, plus or minus your service fee and your responsiveness and what the issue actually is. And on the other side of the spectrum would be the kinds of things that I use on a regular basis. So Manage WP, I want to give them a huge shout out because that is a tool that is invaluable to me and to many small agencies that manage and monitor sites. Manage WP will take care of many of the things that we're going to talk about tonight. And it's a tool that you manage on your own. Like, it requires action from the site manager developer in order to put in place theme updates, plugin updates, to take action based on vulnerabilities that it will raise an alert on. However, it's a very powerful and very affordable tool that does multiple things. So highly recommend that. And iTheme Sync does many of the similar tasks. So keeping an eye on the site availability, helping you do plugin and core updates across multiple sites that you manage. Both of those tools are more hands-on for you, but less costly. WP Go and WP Buffs, now you're making an investment and you're getting some more direct hands-on help from professionals that can manage different aspects of your site. All of the links are in my slides, which I tweeted. Feel free to visit them. Great community partners, each one of them, especially Manage WP, tons of resources on their blog on many of the things that I'm talking about tonight. So these are some of the core tools. Now, let me give you an example of choosing the right tool for the job. So I'm not bashing SiteGrounds at all. There's a purpose here. So let's take SiteGrounds, for example. They're a great community member, great host. However, they have implemented a business practice of being very strict about the type of service they provide. They do hosting, very specifically and very strictly hosting. So let's put hosts on a spectrum, because it really is up to them how much they extend beyond your server is provisioned, your site is up and available, and you have this amount of space on our server that you can use. Every host does that. However, different hosts and different price points and different service levels, they offer different types of support. So WP Engine, for example, they have dedicated teams that will help you migrate your site onto WP Engine. Oftentimes, and this is based on speaking with many friends around the community and speaking with WP Engine themselves, many times they will help address an issue that may be blocking you from coming into WP Engine and enjoying the speed and the optimization that they might offer because you have a conflicting plugin, or if your theme has a kind of an outdated PHP policy or something to that extent. SiteGrounds, on the other hand, they just give you the hosting. So if you open up a ticket and you ask them, hey, why is my site slow? SiteGrounds might say, well, your server is provisioned correctly. I see that your site is up and running. That's as far as we can go. Whereas other hosts like WP Engine, for example, they may help you one layer deeper. They might not develop something custom for you, but they'll say, okay, let me take a quick look under the hood at WP and see if we can find something that might be quite readily available for us to fix. So you want to put this on a spectrum, and so will the prices be on a spectrum. So if you want that hands-on additional speed and a few of the bells and whistles that come with a managed WordPress host, then you want to consider things like that and experiences, which there's tons of reviews. You can read all of the good and bad about the different hosts. So to put this into perspective with the hosts and performance, that is one of the biggest pieces in the performance aspect of your website, is that you have a proportionate host and a service model that is proportionate to your traffic, the amount of media assets that your site is serving. That is really, really important. So you want to have a good foundation in that regard. You're on a good host. I think a consensus among the professional WordPress community is that the hosts are very competitive now with their managed WordPress hosting models. in giving you that extra layer of support and giving you a hosting environment that is optimized for WordPress. So I highly recommend you go take a look at the different features that are available from Bluehost, GoDaddy, Kinsta, WP Engine, and many others that are creating specific products just for WordPress and WordPress related applications. Liquid Web Nexus comes to mind as a WooCommerce. They have really spent a lot of time looking at their WooCommerce customers and seeing what those solutions need to do just for those customers and make it fast, make it optimized, give you recommendations of plugins and things to use alongside your store. And that's a value add for Liquid Web Nexus, WooCommerce hosting. So look at those offerings and take them very seriously and put an investment into them. Site uptime monitoring. I have some recommended plugins here at the bottom of each slide. You can take a look at them. Uptime Robot. I know they will monitor something to the neighborhood of 50 sites for free, or at least they did a little while ago. And if you manage multiple sites on top of having your managed WP, you can have another layer of monitoring, and you can have Uptime Robot also looking at the sites to make sure that they're up and running. Optimization and caching. This is almost every slide, almost every bullet point on here can be a whole separate talk, but optimization and caching can also play a factor in how good your website performs and whether it's available or not. Configuring caching incorrectly can, of course, reroute traffic, not render assets. Very big impact on user visitor experience, but optimizing your site so that it performs well across browsers and across bandwidth speeds is also really important. Email handling out of WordPress. This is a topic I've answered questions for many times, and I'm dog-earing it so that maybe my next talk is just email handling in WordPress. This is another piece of having a strong WordPress solution, just the core configs. Having either a Postman SMTP or a SendGrid solution that does the email handling, that will give you another layer of visibility. Those tools will tell you how many emails are coming out of your WordPress instance. If you put an email log plugin, you'll also see that emails are being handled properly in case something gets misplaced, or if there's the sender email address isn't authenticating, you can look and troubleshoot that once you're able to identify those issues. And then WooCommerce and site functionality. So if you're using Gravity Forms, if you're using LearnDash, if you're using WooCommerce, you want to have some regular testing, not just looking at the orders that come in and relying on passive actions that you see happening on the site, but you actually want to go through the motions. You actually want to add things to your cart. You want to submit form entries to make sure that they're working properly and is expected. So regular scheduled testing, or if you make an enhancement to a feature, going through the motions again, really important to have that site functionality be part of your maintenance program. And now we come into some of the common things that everyone knows that you should do, but I want to add the emphasis in our talk tonight that you should be doing this regardless of how small the project and to the level of your site's needs. If you have a WooCommerce site and you have folks on there every single day, you don't want to set a backup schedule that's on a monthly schedule because you're going to lose transaction history information. You want to be on a daily or optimally hourly or real-time backups. So backups proportionate to what you need, and make sure they're comprehensive. Many tools will allow you to separate, back up my plugins or just back up my database. You want to be doing regular comprehensive backups. So that involves both your files and your database. Regularly scheduled, if you can use a tool that will allow you to set it and forget it, that is the best. And I would highly recommend on-site and also off-site, meaning that you can have these backups saved in the same place where your website lives, or you can have them saved on a completely different server for security and redundancy purposes. So if something catastrophic happens to your hosting account, all of your files get erased, including the backups that you were saving on your hosting account. You still have an offsite backup that is completely removed from your hosting account. You're able to recover that and bring that back. And that's the last point on this slide, which is able to be restored or recovered. Depending on the tool that you choose, they have different workflows around how to recover or clone or migrate a site into a different server. So depending on if you're using Updraft, and if you have a local backup, you can just click a button and roll back your website to 2 hours ago or what have you. Whereas if you're using Managed WP and you'd like to migrate from one host to another, you can clone your site and tell it to go, I want to deploy it on this other new hosting account. So some of the top recommendations: Backup Buddy, Updraft Plus, Managed WP will, again, do ongoing backups and have the bells and whistles of cloning and moving sites. So depending on the solution that you choose, configure it well, configure it regularly so that you don't have to worry about if one thing fails, where is it and how do I bring it back? This is a quick overview of the Managed WP screen. I'm very familiar with this. So here you see you can set the schedule of how frequently your backups will run. And on the calendar view, you can see that all of the past 30 days or what have you are successfully available to roll back to. And in the case of Managed WP, you can also browse all of this stuff. So if you only need something out of the database, or if you only need a plugin or a feature that you custom developed, you need to roll it back, all of these database files are able to be browsed on Managed WP. So you can go and pick and choose what you need out of them, bring it into your WordPress instance. And depending on the frequency of the backups, then your costs will be adjusted appropriately. But speaking from experience, Managed WP is quality enough that every site that I manage, I just put them on at least a daily backup schedule, and the cost is nominal. So the only reason I didn't do that for that small site was because we were just getting started and it was development. So don't do what I do. So put all of your sites under backups. A huge topic on WordPress. So the security aspect of your site. But we want to talk about the core minimum requirements for good WordPress site maintenance. So these two plugins highly recommend. Great community friends, and they both do a great job of keeping an eye on your site in multiple directions. There's 404 observations. There's multi-user login attempts that you can see if somebody tries to log in 100 times with 100 different passwords. IP address blocking. Notifications of vulnerabilities for plugins that you may have forgotten to update in a long time, and now they are at risk of opening up something. So these plugins will take care of many aspects of the WordPress security vulnerability checking. And not to be forgotten is WordPress core updates. So taking a look at every time you log onto your website as an admin, you should probably see a red flag with the number of updates that you should make. And it'll alert you for core updates, theme, and plugin updates on a regular basis. So take a look at those. And if you're able to do them on the spot or in a staging environment, do those after you test to make sure that nothing breaks your site. If you have to put it on a less frequent schedule, just take a look at the priorities of which WordPress updates are really important because of vulnerabilities that are discovered. A quick side note here is that if WordPress themselves finds a important enough vulnerability, they have the ability to push critical updates to patch those kinds of vulnerabilities on the fly. And that's something inherent to every WordPress instance, that they are able to help you just patch those gaps if it's important enough that they feel they have to enforce it in that regard. 9 times out of 10, it won't break anyone's website. They're just those patches that they push. However, it's on our responsibility. It's on the site manager's responsibility to keep an eye out for these major vulnerabilities and do these updates on a regular basis. You can use plugins like Hide My Login to redirect people that might want to try to hack into your site using WP Admin. I've used it on and off depending on how many people are on the site, and if one of these plugins, if WordFence or iThemes has told me, oh yeah, there's tons of people trying to log into your WP Admin, I don't quite like that. Let me hide my login, and only the admins that need access to the admin, they can use the URL that I set, the / URL that I set, in order to get into the admin as needed. Speaking of users, you want to keep an eye on your users list. Who has admin access to your website, and also the roles and capabilities. So a bit of an advanced feature, but if you're able to set whether an author or an editor can install a plugin, that is something worthwhile. If you have many people touching your site, you don't want everyone that doesn't have permission or shouldn't have permission to be able to install a theme, to install a plugin, and potentially break something. And there are some plugins that will help you do that. I didn't mention it here, but there's Members plugin, and it will give you a whole matrix of capabilities and user roles. So you can say editor cannot install a theme, cannot install a plugin, or can only touch their own articles. So there are plugins to help you do that. Two-factor authentication, it's quite easy nowadays to help users or subscribers log into your site using Google or using Office 365 or something else. Two-factor authentication rules or federated login, that adds a layer of security. Limit user login attempts. Once again, these plugins will help you enforce those rules, but there's also dedicated plugins to limit the number of times somebody can try a bad password. And telemetry, there's plugins like Activity Log and Stream. I really like those because I don't want all of my users or my clients installing themes, even though I give them WP admin privileges. So I set up telemetry. I get notified if my client installs a new plugin, or if a new user gets added to a website that is usually static and I don't expect a user to be added. So some of these telemetry plugins are very helpful, and you can kind of go a bit happy and install lots and lots of alerts, but they're there, and they will at least keep an audit log that you can go look at. Hey, who uninstalled that plugin, or who deactivated that plugin? You'll be able to tell very, very easily. Monitoring and notification, right alongside that point, have Uptime Robot, have things that tell you the site is misbehaving or may have malicious software running on it. I should mention ManageWP can schedule security checks on your site. So they will deliberately go through your files, see if there's been file changes, see if there's anything known vulnerabilities, not vulnerabilities, but known scripts, known bad actors that are on your website that are causing havoc. And cleanup. This is kind of a poopery slide. Let's call this just general look around your website instance. The users list is a biggie. Look at who's on there, who may have still admin access that doesn't need it. Take a look at your plugins. Avoid redundant plugins that do the same thing, that you can reduce the load on your website by having 3 different form plugins. Take a look at a database cleanup tool. That's not a big consideration if you don't have a lot of content, but if you have a WooCommerce store, if you have a lot of comments on your site, you do want to keep an eye on the database size and see if there's orphaned data or perhaps media assets that aren't used, that are just taking up space. Bad links, that's a good one. So a bad link checker to take a look around your user experience to see if there's anything that's just leading to a dead end kind of thing. So general cleanup, there's lots and lots of help here for doing general maintenance around a WordPress website. So let's wrap it up. The various degrees of how involved you want to be on this WordPress site maintenance varies greatly. If you have the time, the wherewithal, the limited number of sites that you can really keep a close eye on, you want to have the tools that will allow you to monitor and still have a hands-on role in maintaining and optimizing the sites. If the sites are big enough, important enough, or if you have too many of them, then you may want to outsource these pieces and on priority, give them to a trusted person or a service that will take care of them successfully for you. So for the topics that we've talked about tonight, I'm kind of categorizing them in kind of 3 layers of site maintenance. At the very base layer, layer 1, you have good hosting, you're doing the WordPress health check, you're addressing the flags that it might give you, and you have good theme and good plugins. Okay, that's a good foundation. You have a good WordPress instance, you're set up for success, and you're at the ground floor. One layer above that, now you're doing some usability testing on a regular basis as you develop and implement new features and as time goes on. You're keeping a close eye on your users list, on capabilities and roles if you use a plugin to help you manage that. You're doing regular backups. Honestly, I wish I could just put that on the base layer. Just everyone have your site on some sort of backup. And you're doing some uptime monitoring. So there's some free tools to help you keep an eye on your hosting and whether your site is available across different places readily. And then we get into kind of the deeper layers. Now you're doing some stronger security reinforcement. You have either a plugin, you have security checks that are scheduled through Managed WP, you have 2-factor authentication. You have gone in there and you've set the user roles and permissions properly so that folks can't break your site if they don't have permission to break your site. You have your site telemetry going. You have your scheduled performance checks, and you have your regular functionality testing, either that you do or that you have somebody or a service do for you on your site. These are kind of the different levels of involvement that you're going to have. And the services that are available, many of them let you pick and choose which features you want. Managed WP, for example, if you want security checks and you don't need performance checks on your website, you don't have to click those features. If you only need monthly backups because you have a very slow-moving portfolio website, you can put your site on a monthly backup schedule, and that's all you pay for. So look around the pieces that we've said are important in our talk, and then go look for the services and tools that are going to help you do that on your schedule and on your budget. And of course, there's one more thing. Now, we work in the cloud, we work in WordPress instances, but we certainly don't work in a cloud-only environment. So good digital maintenance practices are really important throughout your workflow and throughout your desk. So I wanted to throw in here a couple of really good suggestions that I feel most all development and WordPress professionals might recommend that you have some flavor of. And these are just really good to get into the habit of having a staging or a development environment, writing working papers down. Like if you have a feature developed by a developer, write it out. What did they do? Have them give you at least some working notes so that you know what was done on your site. And if somebody says in the future, oh yeah, you shouldn't be using PHP 5.6, then you know, oh yeah, I had this feature built on PHP 5.6. If I update my PHP version, it might break. So working documents for features that you have developed is really, really important. As far as your workstation backups, this is so critical also. Um, Having some cloud, it does not matter nowadays which cloud you almost use. So whether you use Google Drive, whether you use Dropbox or OneDrive, have your files continuously backed up so that if something happens to your workstation, you don't end up losing access to all of that data. It's really important. It will save you a lot of heartache, just like we're trying to save you heartache when your website has something happen to it. Do the same thing for your desk. Make sure that you have your information secure in a private repository out in the cloud somewhere. A workstation antivirus. I'm a big Windows fan, and I just use Bitdefender, and I haven't had much to worry about. It'll flag things that I shouldn't be doing. It'll tell me something tried to do something not compliant, and I can mitigate it very quickly. It's just a really good safety net, and in the case of Bitdefender, in my opinion, it's not cumbersome. So a password vault, highly recommend either LastPass or 1Password. They're both excellent, and between me and my collaborators, we've exchanged access to client information, to administrative information using these tools. It's something we don't have to keep in our heads. We don't have to keep in a little notebook. They're incredibly secure, incredibly reliable, and very affordable. And cloud-based emails, just as a basic, take a look at Office 365 or Google Apps Suite. Those are both very affordable, and they would grant you a cloud-based email solution that you don't have to back up, you don't have to worry about, accessible from any device. Really good and important recommendations there that I would suggest that you use alongside of all of the recommendations we've made today for WordPress related maintenance and upkeep. And with that, I hope this has been informative. A lot to chew on. There's many different branches to upkeep and optimizing WordPress instances, but I hope that this has given you some good recommendations, things to look at, things to consider. And I and my fellow hosts are available to answer your questions now.
Thank you, Mervin. We didn't mention this in the beginning, and Cameron did put it in the chat. If you do have a question, please put it in the Q&A section in Zoom. You'll see a little icon on the bottom, at least in Mac, that has a Q&A. So you just click on that and just add your question, and we will go through the questions there. So starting at the top, well, first of all, Mervin, thank you so much for doing this. Very great information that you shared with our group. We're really, really happy to have you give this talk. And the questions show that. So there's right now 13 Q&A questions. I'll read them off to you.
All right, let's go.
Okay. Sharif asks, how often should backups be for static sites?
For static sites, meaning the content doesn't move very much, I would recommend as often as the content moves. So if your static site gets updated once a month or less than that, just have it backed up as often as you make changes to it. And I'll qualify that with, if it's a WordPress website, then you're going to be doing updates on a regular basis. And if it's a relatively static site, then it's fine to put them on a monthly basis, if that. But you want to be doing updates before and after, you want to be doing backups before and after those updates so that you just have a fresh instance and up-to-date backup that you can roll back to in case something happens.
Yeah, usually if I'm working on a site and I'm doing some major update, I will do a manual backup before I go and push that update out, just in case I need to roll it back. But
yep,
I don't know, I would say typically at least a lot of services like daily backups is, at least for WordPress sites, is pretty common.
Yeah.
Just have it run
and
at
it's
midnight.
so affordable. It's really affordable. You should not put it off because of a cost.
Yep, you could hold on to it for 30 days or whatever it is. Like you usually figure it out before 30 days if something's gone wrong. Anyway, next, Elaine asks, how can I acknowledge a like on a blog post if the person doesn't make a comment but just likes? Not sure.
Likes on a blog post depends on the plugin, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure if this is really pertains to the talk, but like I think it really just to answer your question anyway. Yeah, it really does pertain to the plugin you're using. So you know, if it is a plugin, plugins, if it's a plugin from WordPress.org, they do have a support channel that you could ask these questions to the actual author of the plugin if it is not covered already in their documentation. So moving on from an anonymous attendee, would you recommend WordFence Premium instead of the free version?
I would. I really like WordFence and iTheme security. They're similar, but not the same. And they both offer a really good layer of security and monitoring for your site. Take a look at the features. Take a look at the features that come with each, and even compare to other plugins if you have some time. And consider the costs for a site that is important, that has enough traffic, enough content, because many times if you have a portfolio site, you can get away with the monitoring and the alerting that it does at the free model. But if you have a bit of budget and if your site needs it, go ahead and add the premium features and enjoy that peace of mind that it brings.
Great, thank you. Bud asks, do you want to talk a bit about the pros and cons of auto updating for plugins and core? This is a loaded question. I see there's another one on the same one.
Yeah.
I think it all depends upon who you ask this question to. I have my thoughts. Sharif, I'm going to mark yours as answered as well, since it's the same one.
So I do not do auto updates across the board. And that is because the sites that I manage, most of them have either something custom developed or they have a good amount of traffic that if I break the site, it's going to make somebody, including myself, upset. And that can happen quite often if you don't test your updates, if you don't at least take a look at the site and do a glance at the change log, because if you custom develop things and your plugin does a breaking update, which they might note or not on the change log, hey, this requires a change of your child theme, or this requires a change of such and such function, you may very well end up creating an issue. So it's a question of how careful you can be with implementing those updates, because it should be a process. You should go one by one. You should take a look at the site to see if anything looks different or it affects functionality. That's my opinion. Mike, you can chime in.
I have plenty of opinions on this. So, I mean, I would auto update on WordPress before. I would never auto update on a plugin. You couldn't pay me enough. You could never pay me enough money to auto update on a plugin, because I know plugin authors and I would never trust any of them as far as I can throw them.
I guess that's a fair point. WordPress, sure, but
even WordPress, I'd be wary of. The thing is that this is what will happen. You put on auto updates, you get a call from your client when you're out to dinner with your family.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, they're like, you know, if you have your ear to the ground, you know when a security patch has come out, you'll get it out there. Like, if it's super important security patch, you'll get it out there. You know, first thing to prevent that. So like, you don't need to have that auto updated. And also typically a lot of my sites, I'm still like, you know, even I'll even version control like plugins, and well, I might do it in like Composer or something like that. But still,
Mhm.
like there's some level of version control, so I can roll back stuff. Like if
Yeah.
WordPress breaks the site, I can roll back quickly. If a plugin breaks the site, I can roll back quickly.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
like I don't know, unless you're a masochist, I don't know why the heck you would want to run an like auto update. Like I don't
Yeah.
care how many people try to convince me this. I am not convinced that like
You
other people
shouldn't do
that
it. You shouldn't do it across the board. Just set it and forget it, because something will come up.
I will say this.
I agree. It's Murphy's law that you're going to be at dinner, or you're going to be on vacation, or you're going to be somewhere with shitty internet, and something's going to break, and you're going to be like, "Oh crap, I need to go back and fix this," and you're not going to be able to do it very quickly. It's
And think
Murphy's law.
about
It will happen.
how pissed you're gonna be that it's not even something you broke. It's something that somebody else broke. And like you don't want that stress in your life. You know, beat yourself up if you break something and you're like, I pushed out a bug and it broke. Now my dinner's gotta be interrupted. I learned something that don't like push out code and then go out to dinner. Okay.
Yep.
Auto updates, you have no control over it when that happens. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I don't know. Like,
I'm a big fan of WP Rollback. It's a plugin you can install that will allow you to roll back plugins on a one-by-one basis to previous versions. Big fan. I've used it many times when I'm doing a manual update for a plugin and things blow up. I'm like, oh, okay, that plugin broke something. Let's roll back, figure out what caused it, and then supply the bug report to the developer, and then don't update that plugin until it's been fixed.
yeah. All right. That question gets me fired up. So let's move on because
let's go on.
My blood's already boiling from thinking about auto updates. So, okay. Joe asks, what would increase the security level of WP login page help with brute force login attempts?
Absolutely. Sometimes just moving WP admin will just about squash that. And I'm speaking from experience. My business partner on a couple of the big sites that he brought me on to assist him on, we saw that people were doing brute force attacks and all over the place, and many of them. And then we go find, at the time I didn't know that, I think iThemes includes a option to redirect WP admin, but at the time we just looked, how do you hide my login, hide my WP admin, and put it in a different URL? It squashed the problem. It's like if the hackers don't even know what the WP admin access, what the URL is to get into that WP admin screen to log in, they can't try to brute force. So yes, that might be an easy win.
I agree and I disagree. That's also falls under security by obscurity, which by hiding the login, people can, I mean, they can figure out where it is. But that's not this or that. Also, like two-factor authentication is a huge one. That, like, if you require a different a password plus authorizing by like Google Authenticator, or there's a few other ones now, but Google Authenticator is like kind of the big one. That should help against brute force, because you wouldn't even get past the second section before like you're stopped in your tracks. And I think it's like 3 login attempts is the default for which iThemes or WP Fence or Word Fence, whatever it's called.
Yeah, they're pretty tight.
Yeah, they're pretty tight. But yeah, they're like any of those security plugins is going to help you. And yeah, there is like you can like hide behind, like what I find is if you hide behind if you hide WP admin, I always forget what the damn URL is and it annoys me. like I have a few sites that do that. Like, crap, where the freaking hell's the login? And like, oh yeah, it's this obscure URL to get in. And that's fine. If you have that problem, I think that, it's fine. But I think that there are other solutions like two-factor authentication and such that are a better solution or a better solution. If you do combine them all, you get the best solution, I guess.
That's right.
But, protect against what you think that you need to protect against, I think is probably the thing you should think about. All right, Bud's got another question. What do you know about facial recognition login? Come on, Mervin, what do you know about this?
But if you know about a WordPress plugin for facial recognition login, I'd love to know about it.
So as an identical twin, I'm against it.
Do you not trust your identical twin?
I mean, honestly, like, seriously.
I see the way he comments on your Facebook posts, so I wouldn't trust him either. So
honestly, it's an honest question. Like, no, absolutely not. Why would you?
Hey, have you tested this there? Like, do you have facial recognition on your phone? Have you tested whether your identical twin can access your phone with his face?
I have not, and I'm not sure I want to.
I think that as a case study, you should.
Well, he has like a Mervin. He has like kind of a Mervin style goatee, so I'm not sure.
It doesn't matter because I like whether I have a beard or I'm clean shaven, I can still open my phone.
Well, how many siblings out there really have an evil twin that you're really worried about?
I mean, Cameron's one, but I mean his
well, maybe I'm
his
Damien, yeah,
Demon. So
Damien, yeah, Damien.
Was that the last
maybe
question?
I'm the evil twin. Anyway, so
next
no,
question.
I don't.
Yeah, next
I don't,
question.
I actually don't even know of a Facebook a WordPress plugin that does facial recognition. No idea.
Right. I know there's Apple Pay and stuff you can do like that on your phone that might require you to do the local facial authentication, but I don't know about logging in with your face. I'm not sure that's been.
I'd be a little wary of that, honestly. But yeah. All right, let's move on. Anonymous attendee. Does members plugin work well with MH magazine theme and BuddyPress? This seems pretty specific.
Yes, I'm not specifically sure for the theme. I am reasonably assured that it's got all the hooks it needs for BuddyPress.
Cool. All right, moving on. What about broken links? Do they hurt your blog? What should you do with this?
Broken links hurt in the user experience direction. I'm not sure they're a security or a real risk, but they do impact your customers. Because if
I just pointed out a problem with broken links in the beginning of this when I said that I was looking up a bunch of blog posts to a user that doesn't exist when you have 6 million posts. But so on that rare case, it does cause a problem.
Yeah, that's a pretty rare use case though, because
it is. It's a very rare use case.
That's what is it? The theme or the plugin doing a query?
That is just WordPress because it's still classified as an archive page or I'm sorry, an author page, even though the author doesn't exist. Typically, this doesn't.
I don't think Google penalizes broken links. I think it just ignores them. So I don't think it's a really SEO issue.
I mean, you can use like Google Webmaster Tools to find out where your broken links are. I know that if you have a broken link, you might be losing web traffic. So the thing is, if you have a broken link, you can 301 redirect it to the correct link that it should be, and that could be that's more of like an SEO.
So there's two types of broken links. There's broken inbound links and broken outbound links.
Okay.
Broken outbound links are like, whatever, they're broken, not much you can do about it.
Yeah.
Broken inbound links, you can set up a bunch of regex, redirect your URLs in
rewrite rules. You put in some rewrite.
You can do that with a variety of tools. The redirection plugin does a good job of that. You can do it at the htaccess level. You can do it at the web server level. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to go around.
If you do it
traffic.
If you use a plugin, it's best to limit the like with the like safe redirect or like safe redirect manager, like should be limited how, like those should be like temporary redirects. If you have like permanent redirects, you should probably build them into your theme.
And a note on
Plugin.
identifying broken links. I think both WordFence and iThemes will log 404 attempts. So if somebody gets to a 404 because they search for something that doesn't exist, I believe both of those log those. They'll catch them and they'll tell you, hey, somebody tried to look for, you know, egg salad on your website and you don't have egg salad.
Cool. All right, moving on. Susan asks, are there services that manually test your site?
Absolutely. Before we got on the call, we spoke about a really souped up automation tool called New Relic. That is a type of testing that's advanced, and it'll tell you lots and lots about a website. But one of the services that I recently considered for monitoring was like Uptrends. And one of the add-ons that they provide is manual, real, I forget the acronym, it was like real human testing for certain features. So if you have a store or if you have workflows that you must ensure are up and running, then you can buy whatever, 100 tests or 200 tests at a certain price, and they will perform those tests on a schedule to ensure that your site is fully operational. So yes.
Pingdom is another service that does that. That measures uptime, and it could also you could also give it instructions to go through a flow. So, for instance, like at my company, we use Ping. If a site goes down, and like they're testing from multiple locations to ensure that a handful of test locations will see that the site is up. If one goes down, we have a it notifies us in Slack that like, hey, Rolling Stone went down, so we know right off the bat. We also I wrote a test for our subscription flow for like signing purchasing a subscription, and that would run periodically. And if that broke, we'd know about the subscription flow because that's directly revenue impacting if that breaks, and we might not know about it for a period of time. So I think that ran like every 5 minutes to check that our subscription flow ran.
Look, nobody signed up for 3 hours in a row. What's up with that?
Right. But you would know these things, like right, like it would fire off and tell you that like, hey, your subscription flow just broke, and you could be like, oh crap, I just deployed some code and now it's broken. So Pingdom is another great service. I don't know what the price points are.
They're expensive.
Yeah, that sounds expensive.
Those are, I mean, you're talking about services there though that are testing to see if the site is up or not. I mean, I don't know if the question was related to that or if it was kind of more like
it was manual testing.
It was manual.
Also, again, though, like, do they mean like when I click this button, does this happen? And so like I would recommend like a tool like Cypress, Cypress.io can help you write some tests and then like run them. It's more manual. I think there are obviously companies and services that do it on a more automated basis, but just as like a starting point, something like Cypress or Jest or one of the other million testing frameworks out there could be the solution.
Yeah, like for stuff like whether like a process runs through, if you could tell a machine to do it, like it's better to do that, because like people will make mistakes or what have you, like, but if it's like a specific step-by-step process, you should always have a machine do it and not have a person do it if it's a regular thing. Anyway, next question. Jeffrey asks, hi Mervin, do you gear your pricing structure around the maintenance levels that you mentioned earlier, or would you recommend a more a la carte approach? Great talk.
Thank you. And my independent venture, so Wingman WP, I have clients on, let's say, two levels. So there's let's call them the friends and family. They pay me nominally or not at all. And so I have them at the very core basic level. managed WP is at my expense and it's very minimal. So they're portfolio sites and they're not very important that if something happens that I can take my time in resolving the issue. The next layer above that is a layer where I have essentially a WP Buffs or a WP Go type of a service provided through me. And that involves both me available as a developer if something happens, but 90% of the work is actually offloaded. And once more, the sites that are on that level, they merit that type of support. They merit a hybrid automated updates, plugins, and backups, but I do need to be available to respond to tickets on some priority, and that would require my time and involvement and knowing what's going on the WordPress instance. So my pricing structure is that there's core, basic backups, basic monitoring. I might take up addressing an issue on a low priority versus this is a site that has customers, it has workflows that I have built, features, and it's important that this is up and available. So we have an outsourced vendor that helps me deliver my service.
Cool. Corey asks, thanks to all, really helpful info. Just recently inherited a WordPress site for small furniture, newbie to WordPress. Can you comment on the recommended order of updating for plugins, WordPress, and PHP? It was a professionally built site with Timber Twig theme and Advanced Custom Fields Pro.
Okay, good question. There's many layers to that. WordPress plugin updates and theme updates, those you want to take your time and process those one at a time. Go update, take a look, make sure nothing broke on the front end. Once you're done with plugins and themes updates, WordPress updates would be next. And before you do a PHP upgrade, so that's a server-side changing of that PHP version, there are numerous plugins that will help you test and find major challenges that you should have a developer look at before you make that PHP switch. WP Engine makes a very good one. It's the PHP compatibility tester, and that will flag some red items, some major critical risk items that may break your site. To be very forward, you should, if your site is big enough, you should have a developer run that test and look at those results, because there may be false negatives in there, and there may be little things, there may be big things. You want to have someone that knows what they're looking at, assess that result, and then tell you, go flip the switch, or it would require changing XYZ on the theme.
Cool. Lynn asks, you mentioned LearnDash. Is there a theme recommended for Lifter LMS, which is not playing nicely with Elementor Pro?
I don't have a ready recommendation, but let me shout out my day job employer for a moment, because we've worked with LearnDash and we've also worked with Google, most recently making many of the top themes on the WordPress repository AMP compliant. And that would translate to lots of compatibility across many of the top rated WordPress plugins and features, including LearnDash. So in terms of a compliant theme, I would recommend you go take a look at WordPress.org's themes repository and go look at the top 20 or so, which we know and we have worked very hard to make sure that those are tip-top optimized and they're compliant with everything, every one of the major tools and plugins out there right now.
Great. Excuse me. Great. Scott asks, how do you handle SSL? Some of my sites, even though are set to run cPanel auto SSL, don't update their certs on their own.
Good question. And I think I should have touched that a little more on the presentation. SSL it's one of those things that all of the hosts handle it for you. If you're on just
Can
about...
you just say what SSL is?
Sure.
HTTPS. It's a
Yes.
security layer. Just mention that so some people might not know the acronym.
Yes. SSL is a special type of a web connection to your website. And it has to do with your server, which is why I'm mentioning that almost all of the hosts handle that for you. And I can say pretty comfortably that's across the board of like the shared services, the shared hosting, or even the managed WordPress hosting. So while you may have a cPanel account and you may have the auto SSL, that's not working properly, it might require you to open up a ticket with your host and let them know, hey, I'm ticking the boxes, I'm going through the process I'm supposed to, and it's not working. It would require their involvement. But nowadays, that should be the extent of our involvement, unless you manage your own metal. If you manage your own server and this is your very own WHM cPanel instance, then I would say go look at the docs, because you have to go through the rigmarole of what is it, creating a certificate and authenticating it, and
A lot of servers have packages like certbot or something like that you can run a couple bash scripts to set up like cron jobs to check it. Now that is
that's advanced.
That's more advanced, but it's not as advanced as it could be. Yeah. Like you have little jobs that can do it for you, but they're still bash jobs.
What is it? Apache add-ons?
I think the one I use with Apache, I think it's certbot with Apache.
Right.
Because I believe my server is.
But if you're paying a few dollars for your cPanel and your hosting, then go open up a ticket. They'll take care of it for you.
Yeah. Cool. That was a good question. Thanks, Scott. Bill asks, what number of login attempts be limited to? So basically, what should be the limited login attempts like?
That is very subjective. I think we spoke about iThemes and WordFence being fairly tight, so that was significantly less than 10. How forgetful is your audience of their passwords? Kind of take a query around the room and see if it takes a few of them 5 times, then go set the setting to 6. If most everyone is getting in on the first try, then yeah, keep it at 5 or below, so that you don't let folks know that they can try a brute force attempt on your website.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer to that. Like measuring the noise that you have for people like getting locked out of their site. Be like, maybe I can increase it a little bit. I don't think anybody's going to brute force this in 5 tries, sort of thing.
Well, and I come to think of it, I can remember one website that I did set it too tight, and it's like, Mervin, what's wrong? I usually try 4 times and it lets me in. I have had to change the setting at least once before, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I think when people do set it tight, it's usually like 3 or 5, but I think you could be a little bit looser than that for most sites.
Yeah, when I had the issue a little while ago, I mean, we're talking dozens and 100 attempts at a brute force attempt, and that was when we didn't have anything in place, which is when we did the hide my login and we did the iTheme security thing. But if just day-to-day use, 10 or less, I think is normal.
Yeah. Also, I mean, think about it this way too, that there are more than one way to protect against brute force. Like forcing strong passwords is one way. 2-factor authentication, especially for admin accounts. Like you can get away with like subscriber accounts not having it, but you have admin or even editor accounts. You want to have 2-factor authentication for that. So don't look at it as like a one thing that's going to protect you. It's layers of things and layers of ideas that can protect you. Strong passwords, 2-factor authentication, limited login attempts, and you could probably with I would say with some of those things, you know, be a little bit more laxed on, you know, attempts. If you have two-factor authentication in there, strong passwords, you can probably get away with like, you know, like even 15 attempts or so, something that where no normal person's going to hit that, like, unless they really severely forgot their password. But you know, very good question. Next question. Can Mervin share his feedback? Also, where does Cloudways fit on the spectrum? So I guess that's the question. Where does Cloudways fit on the spectrum?
Cloudways, that's hosting, right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
yes,
I think it's
Cloudways. Cloudways is like a managed and or unmanaged host. I use them personally, so I would put them a step above, definitely a step above GoDaddy. Probably a step below WP Engine and Kinsta, just because I feel like WP Engine and Kinsta are more. I mean, they're definitely more well known and more. Maybe like developer friendly and stuff like that, you know, like definitely WP Engine is has a lot of development experience stuff.
Is Cloudways, is that a droplet based? Do you have to bring your own metal for Cloudways?
No, like it's similar to where other sites do it too, where you can pick like Vultr or DigitalOcean, or you know, you can just choose the backend that you want, and it just kind of puts like, it's like basically like an API layer over that, you know, so like they configure the server for you, you know, and have a lot of, it's honestly, it's just really nice, you know. It's like, again, it's like managed, so it's like, oh, I set up a site, you know, it's having issues or whatnot, I can reach out to them, you know, and they can look at it for me, or I, you know, you can SSH to the server if you want and poke around yourself, and then
Gotcha.
you know, when you really break something, you then you definitely have them fix it.
Gotcha. Yeah, hosting is one of those things that you have to look at how much support you need, how involved you're going to be in managing the host or elements of it on your own, and you want to assess them through that perspective. Okay, fully managed hosting, go with the Pantheons, go with the WP engines, because you can't touch the server in those situations except for, you know, the FTP access and clearing the cache. Those are the only things you can do with those. However, if you're a developer, if you want to tinker or need to do other things, then yes, go with the droplets, go with the DigitalOceans and do your own thing with Nginx or what have you. So Cloudways, yes, I've heard good things about it. You just heard good things about it. It just depends on your needs, what you want to pay for, and what bells and whistles those other managed services offer.
Nice. I wonder if they'd fix like a sudo rm/rf / like, someone told me on the internet told me to run that.
No, that's where backups come into play.
I know, I'm just kidding.
And
they do I mean, I have asked them very stupid questions though, like how do I get the directory size of something, and they're like, this is the command you write, you know. So it's like
That's
they are
cool.
Yeah, I mean, like
they're,
honestly,
they're educating the public. They're helping you by educating the public as well, by giving you
I really like them.
Nice. Cool. All right.
I know we have a handful of developers in the room, and I wanted to say that I've used SpinUp WP for the last 6 months or so, and I've been incredibly happy with it. It's essentially an installer of Nginx and the SpinUp WP lean flavor of it, and it's on your own droplet, and it's incredibly fast. I've now migrated upwards of 7 sites and counting. I've upgraded my droplet once, and it's developer friendly. It has really fast caching and all of the features that I care about, and none of the ones that I don't. So just a shout out to SpinUp WP. If you like delicious brains and migrate WP Pro, take a look at SpinUp, because it's one to look at.
Cool. So another anonymous attendee asks, do you typically give clients admin privileges? How do you talk them out of it?
That's really, really tricky. So it depends on the client. It depends on how involved I'm going to be into the future. And it's their solution. They're paying me, they're paying us to provide them with a website and deliver a product. So ultimately, I'm not going to tell them they can't have WP admin access, but I will provision, and often I create a site owner user role. And then I give them the ability to view and edit posts, pages, custom post types, and certain theme. I'll bring certain theme elements that they might want to tweak. I will bring those out onto like a settings page, and I'll give them access to just that. Separately, I'll give them, okay, if you fire me or if you don't need me anymore and you need somebody to get full access, here's your hosting information, here's your WP admin information, here's all the features that I have developed for you. I provide them this access on a separate document, different from the user experience that they have. This way, they can't just install a plugin accidentally or turn off their theme accidentally. Rather, they need to do something different in order to get to that. So it's a mix, and it depends on who your client is and what you're doing for them.
I agree with that. There are a couple things that I have done for me, if personally for me, is that I have given my client like an admin account, but then also gave them their own account and be like, this admin account, like you don't need to use unless you absolutely have to, but for your day to day, you only really need an editor account. Another thing is I haven't really played with this plugin, but I know that there's a plugin called Adminify, and I think that you can manage, even I think to a user basis, like capabilities within a role or something to that effect.
Honestly,
It's been a while since I've played with that, but I think you can do stuff with that.
I've tinkered with several of these plugins, but I have found that inevitably I end up in code because some of them won't query the right capabilities for certain things that have been developed by other plugins or
right.
And I end up, okay, we'll go do a CLI, spit out the capabilities for such and such user and go gerrymander them. So I end up in code often, but there are plugins that will help you do the matrix view of features to who can do what.
Yep. So yeah, it really comes down to the client and, like I said, like if you want to provide that, if you want to give them an admin account and advise them not to use it, but to use this other account that's tied to their email address, like has limited roles so they can limit to screw things up. Now, granted, if they screw things up, hopefully in your contract, they're paying you to fix it. So
let me summarize it this way, because I highly recommend this workflow. If you're delivering a solution to a client and you're not going to be involved into the future, I would create that custom user role capabilities and experience for them. And I would hand them that as number one. Like, here is your login, and it is the manicured experience. If you need to do something in the future, then here is your super admin credentials. And that, if nothing else, you're delivering to them exactly what they asked you for in a very curated way, that it is, here's where you edit such and such, here's where you add new custom post types, and this is the experience that you wanted me to deliver for you. And that way, if they break something because they use the backup login for the super admin that you gave them, then you know they went and broke the seal on the envelope, kind of thing.
That's a good point. Thank you, Mervin. Joe asks, I was talking about Cloudflare page rule to assist with site security. Was that in reference to another question?
Is it?
Okay.
It was the question where he was asking about the page security. And so Mervin was like, yes, any security is better than none. But I think Joe was talking about a specific type of setting, which I don't know about personally, but maybe Mervin does.
Cloudflare for security? I'm not exactly sure.
Okay. Jeffrey asks, should there be as much attention paid to security for landing pages?
Yes and no. It lives in your WordPress instance. So yes, it may be inherently tied and involved with other parts of your site and other pages and post types. And if you have a multi-site with other sites itself, so yes, it should be paid attention as much as everything else. If you're running some sort of a decoupled setup and you're just running static pages and they're flattened, then they're flattened, then they're not at risk of some of the rest of the WordPress vulnerabilities. So
I think it's important. Your site is only as strong as its weakest link. That could be like a landing page. It could be a plugin that isn't well written. You know, just like, especially if you're a developer, you could be like writing amazing code that's secure, that's performant. But if you're not actively like looking at the plugins that you're installing, you're putting your site at risk. If you're unaware of the quality of the code, trust that all goes back to like auto updates, because, you know, and I've said this before, you could have a popular plugin on WordPress.org, go out on a bender and pass an update to it, like after you got back, after you had a few. Like, you could do that. And I'm not saying that people do that, but that's what you're risking if you want auto updates. You just need to be, you need to treat all code that's written that's on your site, you need to treat as equally as the code you write for your site, because it's all the same. Cool. Let's move on to the next one. Anonymous attendee. I had a not very good experience, a not very experienced developer who put Elementor and updated some pages while I still had Beaver building Lite. Now I have both and pages with both. How do I get rid of Elementor? Beaver Builder Lite comes with my GoDaddy package.
That's a heavy question for heavy plugins.
Yeah.
So
that's a tough move.
Yeah.
Any page that you have in a singular page builder, you're going to have to rebuild.
Right.
In the new page builder.
Each page and its respective builder is dependent on that plugin. So if your site has 8 out of 10 pages in Beaver Builder, then you want to eliminate the need for Elementor by building those 2 pages in Beaver Builder. If your site has 8 out of 10 pages in Elementor and 2 pages left in Beaver Builder, then it would behoove you to go and put those pages on Elementor and then get rid of Beaver, or vice versa. So you can't just eliminate a plugin and call it a day, because they're unique in how they write and create those pages. So you have to do the labor of converting the way a page looks in one builder into the other builder so that you can eliminate all of the pages that depend on it. Did I communicate that right?
Yeah, I think so. It's probably best to do that in like a staging environment, test it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's another piece. You don't want to do that in a production environment, just in case something else might be dependent.
Yeah. So, cool. Good answer for that one. Another anonymous attendee asked, do you recommend having your host back up your websites? Would you do another backup besides that?
Good question. The host backups are good, but I have found that they are not always easy to recover from. And sometimes they're atomic, meaning that they involve all of the sites on your hosting account, not just one of the 3 or so that you might have on there. So in other words, if you have a problem with one site in the future and you talk to your host, because that's the only backup that you have, they may tell you, okay, yeah, we can roll your entire account back to 3 days ago before you encountered the issue. And so too will come the rest of your sites. So that's something you want to keep in mind, is what kind of backups you have access to and what sites you can roll to and from. The host is great. You can lean on it if you need to, but I would suggest that Updraft, Backup Buddy, Manage WP, there are many tools that will allow you to roll back more granular changes per site.
I know
I would add also redundant backups is never a bad idea.
Right. Yeah. If it doesn't cost you anything, or if it's nominal, keep them. Just multiple backups. Why not? For sure.
I know for our company, in addition to, since we're a publisher, in addition to regular backups, we also have a post savior. So like when a post goes out, it gets saved to another database. So if we need to do a fast recovery on just a single article that went out for like Variety or Rolling Stone, we're able to easily get it back from another database that we have run internally.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of cool stuff. We have to. We have a lot of brands.
Yeah. You got thousands of people and hundreds of thousands of articles. Yes.
Yeah.
You've got to put layers on layers.
Yeah, layers on layers. And sometimes some are more accessible than others, because sometimes it's not just a full backup. Sometimes it's just one post. Sometimes it's this. Like you don't want to like kind of sort through like an entire backup for something like that.
Yeah. Speaking of which, if you have an e-commerce site and it gets a fair amount of traffic, I mean, you want to have multiple backups and multiple layers, and that's not hard to do. Manage WP will do, I think, hourly backups. If you're developing an e-commerce solution or something that has a lot of traffic on it, I mean, there's tools like WP Merge that will allow you to do hot linking of databases between development and staging. You just want to over version control, over backup, so that you don't lose any data in any instance in between deploying or developing something. Yeah,
especially with e-commerce, where like, that stuff literally is money. If you have an active shop going, it makes, you don't want to have any losses there.
I'm happy to say independent projects and with rtCamp and WordPress VIP, we see how critical hours can be in a production environment. You just don't want to affect that in any way, shape, or form. So redundancies, careful planning of pushing different code. It's really important to keep those sites and those revenue dollars fully available for customers.
Absolutely. Bill asks, please explain two-factor attempts. Great webinar. So I think he's talking about two-factor authentication.
Yes, thank you. And two-factor authentication, in short, it is you're a rock climber and you want to have 2 points of anchor on your secure lines. So two-factor authentication for web security, it means that there's 2 different pieces of information that you must provide in order to say that you are the person you say you are and authenticate yourself. The way that this is presented in WordPress and available to implement readily is, number 1, you have your user name and your user password. However, there is another piece of information that you must provide that is unique, that changes on a schedule, and that comes in the form of an authentication token. So Google Authenticator is one of the most popular tools available, and what it does, it creates a link. It creates a card associated with your WP user access. Now that card changes every minute or 2 minutes, I believe, and it gives you a unique number. Now inside of your WordPress instance knows what that number should add up to, or what is the multiplier, or what the digits should be given the hour of day it is. And that is only unique to you. So you not only provide your username, your password, but now this randomized, not so randomized token number you must enter that alongside your credentials in order to say, yes, this is Mervin. Mervin's number should add up to 5, all of those different digits at this minute within the hour. So it's just 2 layers, 2 unique identifying pieces that you must provide, and they must add up to the right number in order for you to prove that you are the person you are.
Great. Okay. Next one, Sharif asks, do you recommend the backup to an FTP site?
Absolutely, especially if it is not the same host where you are on. So FTP, Google Drive, Dropbox, any variations thereof, you want to be backing up locally. I'd put that on the lower priority, but if it's free and it's included, sure, back up locally, but you definitely want to attach to some other location outside of your hosting account. So you not only have an on-site backup, you have an off-site backup too.
Yeah, RM, RF, everything will.
Nobody knows what that is. So RMRF.
That means delete everything on the server, essentially.
Yes, it's a command that essentially explodes your entire server with 2 or 4 characters, whatever it is.
Yeah. But if you have a local backup, that would be gone too.
Right.
Cool. Another anonymous attendee asks, if you were starting a website from scratch, what are your 3 most favorite themes that have stability?
All right. Good question. I'm going to mention a couple of the popular ones because, believe it or not, they're not only commercially available to you and I, but some big names and big websites leverage these baseline themes that get customized. So Astra and Elementor are a great combination right now, and they're doing some really good work. The theme is lightweight enough that it can perform really well across a number of applications. Genesis themes are also quite popular, very expansible, and very affordable as well. I think they come with like WP Engine accounts and such.
They do, and yeah, they acquired Studio.
Yeah, I love Genesis sample child theme because it's like the mobile view stuff is so baked in, you don't have to worry about it. You just it's like you really only have to address things after the fact, and it's only I've never really had any major issues with it.
And the Genesis Pro stuff that's coming out with the blocks editor looks really promising and really cool. Like Genesis is, I think, has been very forward thinking with a lot of their pro tools, especially leveraging the latest and greatest in WordPress.
Yep. And I would put both of those in the very developer-friendly category, but they're also feature-rich. They do come with a good set of baseline features and tools that you can customize readily and get up and going very quickly. A word of caution against like just relying solely on like the top 5 at Envato. Some of those themes come with a lot of extra fluff that you don't really need, that you don't really want, and that is just going to weigh your site down. Many of them are very good. I've used them on occasion, and I'll go in there and I'll gerrymander things out of them that I don't want, I don't need, that it's just extra bloat, but it does require that layer. So the top 20 list on Envato, take a careful look at it, really look at what you want in your theme, what you need, what features you want, and whether those should be weighing down your theme or whether you can accomplish those with fewer plugins that you add on top of a baseline, Astra theme, for example.
I would recommend, especially bloated themes, if you get comfortable with something like a feature that comes out of a theme, but you want to try another theme, you lose that feature because that feature is tied tightly with that theme. What I would like, if you have a feature, it's much better to come from a plugin because you could run a plugin on with any theme. It's not exclusive to a theme. So
Let me I want to add to that because this is
Sure.
a very important point, and this could be another topic for a talk, because themes today can come with so many extra stuff, extra features, extra plugins that they require. Honestly, bloat, because Bud actually wrote a good article about this not too long ago on joyofwp.com, where he explained how if it is a piece of your site that is functionality, not just the way it looks on the front end, but it's actually some workflow or some interaction that is part of your business solution, that's not a feature that should be in your theme. That's a plugin, either a custom plugin or a plugin that does that very, very well. You don't want to change your theme and then lose some critical piece of process or data that should have been on your website as essentially a capstone. So this is a bit of a theory conversation about what should a theme be, do, and include. You don't want a heavy theme. You want something very purposeful to rendering your site on the front end.
Yeah, and I like over the years the lines have been very blurred as to what belongs in a theme and what belongs in a plugin, and I feel that we're going to see more blurring of the line as the block editor becomes more popular, when you have custom blocks coming into your theme, but then that, like, the theme is what would hold the context for the block, but the database would actually be holding the block within within a database. So if you remove that theme, all of a sudden you lose all the context for that block, which is problematic, which would mean that you would have to move that functionality to a plugin or to a new theme that you use. And I know this is probably giving everybody a headache, but it's things that
Gutenberg future.
I feel like that, like, sort of hierarchy needs to be revisited, like with Gutenberg. That, I don't know, that's a whole other conversation.
There's gonna be a huge market in migrating sites that are powered with page builders to Gutenberg.
Oh, there already is, Cameron.
Those tools,
oh my gosh.
But the tools don't really exist yet. It's like,
no. How do you debug? How do you decode all of that shortcode spaghetti? We've tried at rtCamp. We've had requests from Divi. We've had requests from Beaver, major sites with thousands of pieces of content, and it's an incredibly complex labor. It's not easy.
Yeah.
Nobody has provided like a one-click solution to migrating from Beaver Builder to Gutenberg or Elementor to Gutenberg.
As far as I've gone,
you would need context for what that thing in Gutenberg, or for what that thing from Beaver Builder is, like
I think some of these tools are coming, but they're not mature yet.
But you would still, like, if you had a tool like that, it would literally have to be a plugin that offers a Gutenberg resemblance to whatever that piece of content was in Beaver Builder or Elementor, and then also provide a migration tool on top of that to migrate it to that. But then now you're dependent on that plugin, but at least that plugin is like a Gutenberg or block plugin, versus something that's done like something that's more opinionated, something that's more integrated. But like, that's a whole other topic.
It's a big market. It's coming. I personally don't think Gutenberg is ready for prime time. I know other people have opinions on that, but I think that I still think we're 6 to 12 months away from Gutenberg being ready for a high level production site. But let's go to the next question.
All right. So the next question, Ava asks, I have an online magazine site with MH Magazine. I would love advice on building it from the person who just talked about publishing to different magazines.
It might have been you, Mike.
Oh,
you manage some big magazines.
Oh,
Building it from a person who talked about publishing to different magazines. I have an online magazine site.
Yeah.
Ava, if you don't mind, you can ping me on our Slack or send me a meetup question about this. I think there's a little bit more of a discussion that with the limited time we have.
Help point you in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly. Jeffrey asks, are there any special considerations for maintenance of sites on mobile devices?
Not really, because we're talking about WordPress, so it's likely a mobile optimized WordPress site. So it would be it would extend to all of the things that we've talked about today, for a front end that is very well catered for a mobile device.
Cool. Ron asks, don't you think that Gutenberg will soon render page builders superfluous?
This is a heavily debated topic. My personal opinion is no. I think the builders remain the choice of competitive solutions into the foreseeable future. Gutenberg would need to outperform the value, the ease of use, the experience. The short answer is no. I don't think Gutenberg is going to render them useless anytime soon.
I think some people are using our Q&A to just troll us. Is really what's coming down to. They're asking like
I look at Gutenberg.
Very
we've gotten into this. We've gotten into this already tonight.
They're just like feeding the fire, throwing gasoline on the fire that they know that's there.
I look at Gutenberg every month or so. I look at Gutenberg and I evaluate whether or not it can do what I'm doing with page builders, and the answer is it can't. It's not there yet. I can't do full site editing Gutenberg yet. I can't have all these predefined design patterns like flip boxes and carousel slides, and like all of these packages, all these add-ons that come with page builders are not available yet for Gutenberg. Will they be available for Gutenberg in the future? Of course, but they're not there yet. So
maybe not. I don't. Some of the page builders are like, as you pointed out, like to have that level of control over content like that. That's added bloat to the site. There's a lot of bloat that comes with some of these page builders.
There is.
In order to like put this text in this exact pixel perfect place, like when you're building a plugin like that for, thousands or millions of sites that are going to use this plugin, it needs to be flexible enough. Like it has to be non-opinionated enough, but flexible enough for these sites to get what they want out of it. And when it comes to like WordPress itself, like Gutenberg is, there's a lot of cool stuff that will come out of it. I think the UI will get a lot cleaner, but its data storage is going to stay the same. It's it's going to be, there's a lot of JavaScript, a lot of it's JavaScript heavy.
It's sprouting. It's the kindling right now. I mean, the WordPress experience is going to keep growing in how it leverages Gutenberg and the widgets and the header and the footer. Right. And who knows, once the dust settles on all of that, then I think the builders are going to get a run for their money. But right now they're miles ahead. There are so many more miles ahead in terms of momentum.
If you think about Gutenberg, like put Gutenberg into context of what it is. So it's better than the classic editor.
The classic editor, sure.
Like you can do a lot more in Gutenberg at this point, and it's less confusing than the classic editor. Like if you want to do something that's slightly more complicated. In classic editor, like we've all had WordPress sites where you go to the raw text section and there is a ton of markup in there and you don't touch a damn thing in there because you don't know like what's going to break there. You just know this is just going to work just the way it is, right? A Gutenberg, it fragments that stuff out. So like like things are very opinionated, as like, this is a gallery block, this is a paragraph block, this is an image block, this is, you know, and it renders close to what it would render on the front end if done correctly. So, you know, it's, will it replace page builders? Maybe not. Will it replace just regular metadata? Maybe not. I mean, metadata, like there's some, you know, everybody says like, let's put this stuff in the block editor. Like, oh, metadata is just fine. Like use like advanced custom fields isn't going anywhere.
Right.
You know, people have varying opinions on this, and I think it really comes down to what kind of site are you building and what are your needs. Cool. All right. All right. Someone, Cameron, mark that. Next question, but from an anonymous attendee. Do you have a recommended tool to check for theme bloat? What is the ideal baseline?
That's pretty tough. That requires I'd say good level of expertise and savviness. However, you can take a look around the stuff that the theme brings. And if you're not familiar with the features or the plugins that it may be requiring, then you can ask questions, for example, at the help desk. It's like, do I need contact form 7, which my theme requires, if I'm using Ninja forms already before I use this theme? That would be a case where, no, you don't need contact form 7. If you, before you've installed this theme, you were using Ninja forms and you're happy with it and it works fine. Other plugins and features that come with a theme, we may know because we've seen many themes. We've seen many WordPress instances, but you might not know that you don't need something or other in there. So there isn't a single tool that I would recommend, but as I mentioned, you can take a look at what comes with the theme and see if there's something you don't need or are not familiar with.
If you're savvy enough where you have, whether you yourself or someone that you've hired knows WordPress inside and out, there are ways to DNQ or unregister scripts that aren't being used. Yeah. You could also, you know, put things in like a query monitor to see like if there's any superfluous queries that are happening on a particular page that you want to kind of put a stop to. If you're using a plugin, you know, at least every plugin that's on WordPress.org has a support area. If you find that a plugin's doing something hairy or something that you don't like, if you think is performant or something that's a performant hindrance, you know, put a lot of details in there. Even like provide a patch if you know what you're doing, like to help them out and help everybody else out, especially if it's a plugin that's free and like, you know, there's no charge associated with it. Like, you know, like at least the plugins that I've maintained before, if someone ever sent me a patch, like I would love that person. Like even if it's not the exact patch I'd use, but something that I can just kind of tweak and test and put in there, and I didn't have to really do anything except for push it out. You know, people appreciate that, especially with open source. We all got to help each other out.
I guess I should ask Steve Bruner for a contributor credit on his plugin. I've sent him so many patches.
Oh, you should absolutely. If you send him patches, you should absolutely get credit.
I'm kidding. Steve Bruner is the lead organizer of the NYC meetup, and he's building a development framework plugin. Let's call it that. Picklist. Picklist is a code-based custom post type and meta builder application that you can use on WordPress.
You should absolutely get credit for Mervin. I'd give you credit if I was Steve. Cool. All right. Moving on. We're getting close to the end, but we'll try to get through these. There's 5 left. I think there's been 5 left for the last like half hours.
let's do a quick fire.
All right. So let's try to get through. All right. Has anyone updated their Elementor Pro with the newest version of WordPress? We crashed our nonprofit site when we tried to update it. When we added Lifter LMS, white screen of death. Lynn.
Yep. one of the latest versions, I think it was 3.13 or so, if I remember correctly, there were breaking changes that were made. And I know this both from my personal experience and because rtCamp had to manage the process of updating several big sites that leveraged Elementor. And there were things that needed to be recoded in order to have that version of Elementor work. This is why it's important to test, not just set it and forget it, because there may be instances such as this where things would break. So yes, there are versions of Elementor that are breaking. Be careful.
Cool. Another anonymous attendee question. Any recommendations for a good membership database plugin?
Membership and user access controls to certain parts of the website. That is a humongous topic. There are different things you can do with different plugins, different membership levels. I support a membership site.
Sorry.
Thank you. There are a number of sites I support today that have used a lesser known plugin in order to do the membership management, and they're suffering for it because it's less supported, less documentation. I'm not able to expand and enhance it. So you want to look at those carefully. To plug a open source project that we're involved in, some of the features that you might be looking for, you may find in plugins like BuddyPress and or gatherpress.org, which is a community-based application that brings in features such as meetup.com. You can have groups, you can have events, you can let people RSVP. So you might want to look at some.
It's under super heavy development. I would not recommend it for production at this point.
Right.
If you want
But
to test
BuddyPress, which is what we're basing our model on, BuddyPress may also bring many of the features that you might be looking for.
There's also, if you're looking for paid, Jason Coleman behind Paid Memberships Pro has been doing that forever. He has a slew of plugins with that. Pretty popular.
WooCommerce membership subscriptions.
WooCommerce, yep. WooCommerce membership subscriptions. So there's a whole slew of plugins, and it really comes down to if you set up don't test them on your production environment, especially if you can, but put one on there, see how it feels, see if you like the features, read the documentation, see how good the support is. I'd say a lot of these things revolve around support, how frequently updates happen, involvement in community, documentation. These are the big things I think most people are looking for when they're picking out, especially a plugin that is going to be handling, 50 to 80% of what your website actually is. It's really important.
And of course, if you're handling money, you want to put a few dollars into it and get it done right, so that you can use it into the future reliably and know your.
Yeah, you don't want to go cheap on that. If money's involved, especially in your core business. Okay, we're down to 3. Would you consider? Nadine asks, would you consider responsiveness part of site maintenance? If so, any recommendations for optimizing speed?
For optimizing speed,
so performance-based.
Humongous topic as well. The hosting is a likely easy win. So make sure that you're in proportionate hosting to what you need. And then you need to look at your WordPress instance, avoiding that bloated theme, avoiding duplicate plugins or multiple site builders like we've talked about. That would be a major cause of bottlenecks in performance. And using some of the recommendations that I have in the presentation. So some of the Imagify or Smush for images, that's an easy win. WP Rocket or W3 Total Cache, that may also yield some benefit. But you do need to take a good, careful look at your WordPress instance to find the real root causes of some issues. If you're having major performance issues, you need to be on a good theme, need to be on good hosting. You need to have plugins and features packed down so that you're not have redundant or duplicate efforts on things. You have to take a good, careful look.
You might want to actually especially hire somebody in the know to do a site audit for you at some point, and figure out like where you can get, you know, more speed out of your site, like where there's some obvious issues. It could be a particular plugin, it could be some particular code. You know, sometimes, you know, those things are hard to, if you are not a developer, it's hard to identify some of those things. So sometimes if you're experiencing tremendous problems where it's like costing you money, it'd be best to invest in somebody to take a look at that for you. All right, we're down to 2. John says, great talk. I'd really be interested in Mervin's talk on email. My question is, have you ever seen Bash or some other automated way of doing direct SQL backups?
Sure. There are scripts, including WP-CLI, that can produce a flat exportable product of your database quite easily.
Yep.
And you can send that off to download it, create whatever
you can set up as a cron job on the server if you want.
Yep. So yes, there are resources that can help you do that. With relation to the email talk, this is, yes, it's been a very common question for the help desk and a few other applications around my development work. And it's something that WordPress does not do a great job out of the box. On most hosts, yes, you're fine. It'll send emails, but many occasions, if you have mission critical things running on your site like e-commerce, you can't leave it up to chance. You can't leave it up to the default settings. You want to have something in place that will manage and show you that those emails were delivered, they were sender authenticated, they got to the inbox, and that's where the talk will focus on what are the options and how to implement that in different WordPress websites. You can take a look at the resources for the ones I mentioned in the talk if you want to work ahead. But yeah, it's important if you have money going through your site, for sure.
Awesome. So we answered 37 questions, Mervin.
Wow.
Thanks for sticking with it. That was, I think the Q&A section was longer than your entire talk, but that's okay.
It was, and that is fantastic.
Yeah, but I think we had some really great conversation among at least the ones that could speak. Sorry, we had some really great questions and yes, some really thought-provoking stuff. We are over time at this point.
Thanks everyone.
But I want to thank Mervin for asking me, like, hey, I want to give a talk on this, and ended up being a really great talk. Mervin, hopefully we can get you back on, you know, sometime in the future to do another talk.
Totally.
Some really, really good information and really good Q&A, which I think in a lot of cases is some of the most valuable information where we're able to actually kind of dive deep into some of the concepts that people are.
We feel the missing of the help desk for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And speaking of which, did we ever post the link? I will post it now. I'm going to post in our Slack. If you have not, here, I'm going to post in a chat here.
So just to wrap up, coming up in 2 days, we have the WordPress Mega Meetup, which we joined. It's a very large online meetup happening on Wednesday. If you'd like to join that, go to meetup.com, find our group, and join us there. There's probably going to be several hundred people on that meetup because it consists of like South Florida and a couple other large meetups that have joined that. So we are participating in that with our group. And then on Monday, November 30th.
Can I just follow up with what you just said that real quick? Some really important information. There is a link there. You have to register from the link in the description and not just say you're going in, because we aren't hosting this like on our Zoom. It's like I said, it's a mega meetup. So it's like hosted elsewhere. We're just like a bunch of groups are promoting the same thing. So there's a link in there. So you have to register from that link. Just so so that's completely clear. All right, Cameron, go on to the next thing.
And then on Monday, November 30th, which is 2 weeks from today, but our own Bud Kraus will be covering a session called Working with an Elementor Template. So if you're interested in Elementor Page Builder and learning how the templating works within that system, you can feel free to join us on that.
We're also having a holiday Zoom party on December 14th. We are. So you'll see our next hangout is going to be a holiday themed hangout. So I don't know where celebrate the holidays somehow with that information. Anyway, thanks everyone. The recording will be posted on the meetup once since it gets sent to Pam's account, she'll send it to me and I will post it up when we get it. And I just posted the link to join our Slack. If you haven't, you should absolutely do that.
And please retweet if you haven't already. You can retweet my slides.
Excellent. Mervin, if you also want to post a link to your slides in the meetup in the comments, that'd be great too.
Will do.
Awesome. All right, Mervin, again, thank you. And everybody have a great night. Great meetup tonight.
Everyone.
Thanks, everybody.